Everyone, welcome back. I promised to make a video every week, the Peter Crowder story, and I think some people have seen the one on YouTube, The Great Escape. Um, this is different. What I want to do here is celebrate our 50th year in Australia. That's my wife, my son, and I arrived at Fremantle on the 31st of March 1969. So the events leading up to the day we arrived started way back in 1968, a year or maybe 18 months before. I was working at a building site in KwaZulu Natal, and it was about 100 miles from Durban. And what happened was the other workers on the site asked me to speak up for them because we didn't get this 5 cents per hour increase after 3 weeks as promised by the company. So they asked me to be the spokesman, and I spoke to the foreman. I said to him, the other welders are asking me to ask you to ring the head office to see if we can get our pay increase because we're living away from home and we're only going home weekends, and the company did promise us that. And he said, yes, he agrees. He remembers the agreement they made. And this went on for 3 weeks. Each time I'd approach him, he'd say, oh, I'll do it next week. Or I rang them up, they say the money will be coming this week, and it didn't come. So this particular morning, I said, well, the other workers were grumbling, well, when are we going to get this money? You're supposed to be our spokesman. And there was 7 of us. So I said, all right, what we do is we'll just withdraw our labor. We'll just stay in bed and see what he says. So he came down at about 10 past 7 in the morning to ask us why we're not at work. And then I said to him, well, we've withdrawn our labor. Now, in South Africa at the time, during the apartheid era, that was actually illegal to strike. I could have or we could have all got into a lot of trouble with the government at the time. But he said, but you got to come up to the office and I'll make the call. I'll do it right away. So we got up, we got dressed, and we went to the building site office, and he made the call. And he said, oh, everything's fixed up. They're going to send the money out this afternoon, the arrears. I said, oh, okay. And I said, there's another issue that I want to bring up while we're here. I said, our provisions are being stolen, and we didn't know who it was until we spoke to the kitchen hand. And the kitchen hand told us it's a white man with red hair that's going through our window and stealing our eggs and the bread and the butter. And the only white man with red hair on the site was the crane driver. And I said to him, does that rule still exist, that if you get caught stealing, you get the sack? He said, definitely. So I said, well, it's the white man with the red hair, it's the crane driver. And the crane driver was his big drinking mate. So he had to sack him. And then he said to me, all right, he's sacked. And by the way, they want you at the head office. You got to go back to Durban. That's 100 miles away, back to the city. And he says, you got to go back to the workshop. They're sending you to another site. I knew I was sacked. So that's how I got sacked. Following that, I was unemployed for 9 months. I could not get a job anywhere in Durban because at the time Durban was a small city. So all the welders and welding companies knew each other. I'd be there first in the morning when there was an advert in the paper advertising for welders, and I'd be standing outside and the foreman would arrive. And I'd wait, and 7 o'clock he'd come out. There's maybe 3 or 4 other men there applying for the same job, and he'd call the 3 other guys and say, all right, you, come in, start. I say, hey, hang on. You saw me, I was standing here when you arrived. Say, bugger off. Piss off. And that's how I was treated. For 9 months, I couldn't get a job anywhere. And then I realized that I have to do something to get a job. Fortunately for me, a company came from Holland, and they had a big extension to do at the Isipingo Shell oil refinery in Durban. And I got a job with them. But that job was going to be for about 12 months to 18 months, which meant after that I'll still be unemployed once that job's finished, because I couldn't get a job with the other places. So while I was working there, I met 3 Australian fellows, Jimmy, Reggie, and the other fellow. I only got his name as Apples. I was only told his name as Apples. But Jimmy and I were very close, and he was the one that encouraged me all the time. He said, "Why don't you leave South Africa?" He says, "I can't come to your home. You can't come to my hotel. We can't go to the pub. What sort of country is this?" I said, "Well, look, that's how we live." He said, "Nah, go to Australia." And he carried on like this for about 6 months. And eventually I did write to the consulate in Cape Town. And I waited for the reply. And I told him, I said, "Look, I've applied there and I've filled out some forms, and they're going to contact me for an interview." He said, "All right." Then he'd buy a bottle of Coke, a big bottle of Coke with Jimmy. And he'd unscrew it, and he'd attract the white South Africans' attention. He'd go, "Hey, hey," and he'd unscrew the top, and they'd be looking at him, and he'll pass a bottle to me like that. He said, "Have a drink." So, all right, so I'd have a drink, and I'd give it back to him. Without wiping the top or using a cup, he'd start drinking from it, looking at them. And they'd get really angry, call him names, and make all sorts of comments about him being a kafir booty. In other words, a nigger lover, doing that, and he didn't care. And he'd do things like that to annoy them. And he said to me, "Oh, you got to go to Australia, Pete." He says, "We're from Thurul in Wollongong, and we work for the steel works, Port Kembla Steel. We'll be away for 2 years because we're going to the UK, then USA, and then New Zealand, and we're back in Australia in 2 years' time. By then, if you're there, make sure you come down to where we live, and we'll get you a job where we live." So I said, "Fantastic." I thought I'll never get there, because I thought they've got that white Australia policy, and they ill-treat the Aboriginals. I mean, we knew about that. I thought, will they ever grant me citizenship or even allow me to enter the country? However, I did have an interview with Mr. Farmer, the consulate at the time, my wife and I, and he wanted to know our qualifications, etc. And he said, "Look, your qualifications look in order. However, we don't have any provision for non-white migration to Australia." I got up, I said, "Oh, thank you, I knew." I said, I thought about it, and I got up to walk out. He said, No, but you can go on an indefinite visa." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "An indefinite visa is you can go for 12 months. You can stay there for 12 months. After that, you can come back to South Africa, or you can go to anywhere else in the world, or you can take out Australian citizenship." He says, "But you have to pay your own fare, find your own accommodation, and find your own job." I thought about it. I said, "Well, yeah, okay." He said, "I'll let you know in 2 weeks' time if you've been accepted." I said, "Oh, all right." And we left, and I thought they'll never accept me. That must just be a big eyewash, because white Australia policy and the way they treat Aboriginals. And I said to my wife, "Don't worry about it. We'll never be accepted anyhow." and she was happy because she didn't want to leave South Africa. I was the one because of my employment situation. And I said to Jimmy, the friend at the oil refinery the next day, I said, oh, I went for the interview and he's talking about an indefinite visa. We got to pay our own fare, find my own job, and find our own accommodation, then we can go. He said, oh, well, why didn't you do it? I said, well, I can. I've just barely got enough money. If it means I've got to pay for the three of us, I've just got enough to get there. So that's fine. We're going to be there in 2 years' time. You catch up with us. So that's how the whole thing started about going to Australia. Because I didn't know anyone here. There was no one I knew of in Perth that was going to meet us, because I only had enough fare to get us to Perth. However, in 2 weeks' time, we were accepted. And I then had to book the passage. And the day before we left, I had to virtually give all the new furniture I had just bought, because I'd only been recently married and we were still paying off the furniture. I had to give everything away because nobody wanted to buy it. They knew I had to get rid of it. So I got rid of all the furniture and packed up, just kept the beds and a few other odds and ends. And then we left about 9 days before the 31st, because it took 9 days from Durban to Fremantle. So the next time I talk, I'm going to sign off now, because this phone doesn't allow me to go more than 10 or 12 minutes with a video, and then it cuts off. So I'm going to stop there now. And remember to like and subscribe, and make comments, whether they're negative or positive. Ask me questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you ask. Okay, so long for now. Until next time. Bye-bye.